Good morning. I'm Muriel Bowser. We are located in the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. I'm joined by members of my cabinet. We have just completed our FY23 submission to the Council of the District of Columbia, transformative budget, $19.5 billion that's balanced, that invests in the recovery of the District of Columbia. We're happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, right here, Mayor. Right here.
James.
Good afternoon, Mayor and your team. Just got a few quick questions in terms of your proposal. You have this program for black homeowners. Are you afraid you may get some pushback because that program is specifically for black people? Also, I want to ask about the Deanwood extension for the circulator. And could you expand a little bit more on Winston middle school?
Sure. So you refer to our legacy initiatives, and the aim of those programs is to help longtime residents stay in the district. You are familiar with the anxiety that people feel about housing affordability and being priced out of D.C. So these are a set of initiatives, though there are many throughout the budget that are specifically focused on how black residents can stay in the district. One innovative initiative is about, and you heard Councilmember McDuffie comment on it, is a legal service fund that people can go to transfer air property, to develop a plan for the transfer of their air property. So the asset where black Americans largely accumulate their wealth is in home equity. And sometimes that home equity is lost when someone dies. So we want to make these legal funds available to our residents so that they can have that planning and have the certainty of how their wealth transfers to their children or to other family members. We will create a strike force on the Black Homeowners Fund, similar to the strike force that I created at the beginning of my term, focused on how we craft a program that can help African Americans buy homes, own homes, transfer homes, get bigger homes, fix homes, you name it, in the District of Columbia. Again, we know that's how people build wealth largely in this city, and it is a huge investment. It will be a huge investment to how we close gaps, opportunity gaps, education gaps, health outcome gaps, when we know that people can be invested and build wealth in the city. I'm going to ask Kevin to remind me of exactly where we are with that.
The Deanwood Circulator extension will happen in the latter half of fiscal year 23. There's the reason for the timing is there's a global supply chain shortage with the production of circulator buses that become our circulator buses, and that's the timing from the delivery. It's not a funding issue, from the delivery and the rollout of that program and the expansion. We're looking at the second half of FY23.
And I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Kine to address Winston. This is a elementary school in Hillcrest in Ward 7 that has been unused, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. And it is on the site of the Hillcrest Recreation Center. So DCPS has advanced a proposal to put Winston back in use as an educational facility with a specific program, and Paul will talk to you about that. But we are also going to build an indoor pool that is adjacent to the Hillcrest Recreation Center.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we're extremely excited about the proposal to create a combined project between the Recreation Center and what is currently the Winston School location. And our proposal, the Mayor's proposal, is that at the site of the Winston School, there will be an educational campus that will offer offerings in the fields of STEM, environmental sciences, for schools from across the city. The way to think about it is this will provide access to really high quality programming that all of the schools, the neighboring elementary, middle, and high schools don't currently have all of them, and so this will provide access in that way. It will also include a component of career and technical education, And we've been in conversations with the community about other community-facing educational offerings that they will also be excited about.
Thank you. Could you go into more detail on the indoor sports arena, and does this mean an end to any efforts to relocate the Washington Commanders to RFK? And on another note, could you also explain regarding DC Safe, the program, of course, that goes to relocate domestic violence survivors? Will they be seeing increased funding in light of the increased demand due to the pandemic?
Well, thank you for that question. So let me start with RFK. And as I explained to the council members, we've used this strategy with other federal properties. We put down a down payment, even though it's their land, and then we work out how to get control of the property. Our priority has always been getting control of the site. We have a lease. It's not a long enough lease for the city to make huge capital investments. So we continue to look to the Congress to deal with that issue so that the district can either buy it or extend the lease. We also need the lease arrangements changed. Currently, they only support recreational uses. But you have heard our immense need for housing, for added jobs in the district, and we need to be able to redevelop RFK to do exactly that. So the two uses that we are funding in this budget are contemplated by the work that Events DC did with the community to see what types of uses can go at RFK, a 100-acre plus site. So the first public use that we're funding here is an indoor sports complex that we don't currently have in the district for indoor track, gymnastics, swimming, all of those things in a citywide venue. So that's funded. Additionally, and also contemplated in the earlier community outreach work, are connections to Kingman Island for bikes and pedestrians. So that's funded here at $18 million, the sports complex at $60 million. I mentioned that the campus is 100 acres, so a lot can happen there, including an NFL stadium. But what we will not do as a city is wait. There are things that we need to happen now, and we're going to signal to the federal government and the Congress that we're willing to put up our share, but they have to deliver to us the land unencumbered by the restriction for recreational purposes only. DC Safe, Kevin.
Hello. There's a $7 million increase for victim services for the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants. That's across multiple different victim types, one of which is domestic violence victims.
Yes, sir.
How do you summarize the economic health of the city right now? And there's this talk about the surplus being revised down. Did that lead to the budget books being delayed?
Yes, it's my understanding. We, and I'll ask Kevin, it's kind of some inside baseball, but the CFO in our government is responsible for revenue estimates, not me. I wish we were responsible for revenue estimates, but the CFO is responsible for revenue estimates. And we learned at the end of last week that there was an error, and that caused us to have to make some changes to our complete budget. And then we learned on Monday that error wasn't entirely fixed. Is that right? Did I characterize that correctly? Okay. And so that's where we are.
How do you talk about the economic health of the city right now? Was it a challenge putting together this budget because of the pandemic downturn? Has the city rebounded in some ways? What's the picture, you think?
I think that because of our careful management, that we're in pretty good shape. But we know where there are some things that we have to be concerned about. We have to be concerned about our commercial property revenues. That's the one area that dipped. That's not the only area, but that's one area that dipped. That long-term vacancy in the downtown and vacancy on our commercial corridors could lead to lower values in our commercial properties. Lower values in our commercial properties means less taxes. Less taxes mean we don't have the ability to make robust investments in schools and mental health services and human services and roads. So that's why it's so important, and why we have included a recovery budget, economic development recovery budget, that has a vitality fund that will allow us to attract new businesses, that has money to attract new destination events, that also has money that all of our partners can create new activity. What we know is we have to fill the spaces that are vacant, and we're going to work with our bids to do that. In some cases, we have to change the spaces. We have identified areas of our downtown, as an example, that have a lot of Class C properties that should be reimagined. Maybe those properties become residential spaces, and so that's important. But we also have to replace the people who may not be coming back to the downtown because they're teleworking, or they're teleworking 3 days out of 5 days. And a way to do that is with new activity, more tourists, more places to go, more things for people to do. Yes.
Quickly, do you think the increase in officers, is that going to have an effect on crime in the near term?
I think when every part of our ecosystem is up and running and firing on all cylinders, that we're going to see improvements in people who are using guns. We're going to see improvements with our juveniles not being allowed to repeat offenses, and we'll drive our numbers down.
Adding, I think it's only 36 net new officers in 1 year. It's not going to have a quick fix or anything to crime, it seems like, right?
Well, first of all, we don't know exactly how many we'll be able to keep. So that number that's a range. This budget includes retention monies, and I'm glad you raised this, because what we don't want to happen in this council deliberation process is to say, okay, we'll give them the officers, but we're going to take all the retention dollars, because that won't work. That would only get us to 30. What gets us to 100 or 150 new officers is if we don't attrit 330. And that is why to have that net positive go to where we need it, 100, 150, we are looking very carefully at what it's going to take to keep our officers from retiring or resigning. Yeah.
You mentioned just trying to get downtown back. President Biden mentioned during his State of the Union.
Wasn't that beautiful? I wanted to kiss him.
Well, have you had the chance to, what role can you play to try and facilitate more people returning to work, federal employees specifically, downtown? So that's kind of part one. And then part two, just related to that, is the challenge of forecasting this budget, given that some recovery funds are being used and it's tough to project going forward sort of what may happen ultimately in terms of dollars brought in. So I'm just kind of curious, the teleworking coming downtown question, as well as the just the forecasting challenge question, and then I have a commander's question.
So we've been doing a lot of hard work for 2 years to get employees back, and the biggest part of that work is crushing COVID, standing up world-class testing, making sure and facilitating people getting vaccinated so people know that it's safe to come back to work. We work very hard with the administration to let them know the conditions in the city and that people should be back at work. We are leading by example in this regard. DC government, our 37,000 employees went back to work last June. We offer our employees some flexibility, up to 2 days of telework per week, and they are in person serving DC residents. Our approach with the federal government, and quite frankly, we thought their planning was tepid. And it needed a more central voice, and it needed to come from the boss. So that's why when President Biden said it's time to go back to work and we're going to start with the federal government, it sent the signal to every agency head, every secretary, and it was also a signal to the private sector that the federal colleagues are going back, The contractors that serve them can go back. Other private businesses can go back. And we are seeing more activity, more traffic, more people on the metro. So we know people are coming back. But we also don't think that it's going to be 100%. And so we want most people to come back most of the time. And that is how the CFO, if I may speak for him, I don't know if he's up here, the CFO does have a difficult job in estimating what the future of work will be. But that is their job. And they look at a lot of inputs to get that job done. But I feel fairly confident. They're not known for overestimating. So these are likely conservative estimates. Oh, I thought that was him.
All right, just on the commander's point, you said we'll put forward what we need to. Are you just saying, just in terms of creating the environment by which to possibly lure the team, just with changing the lease and asking the federal government to do their part to make it favorable to revamp the RFK site, or are you just what can be done additionally from your perspective to maybe get the team? Are you willing to put forward tax dollars? Period,
well,
to make it happen?
I've always made my position clear. Get the land, right? Get the land, and so we need the Congress to deliver on that. We've been working with them on that for 7 years. Get the land. The district, as you can see, is willing to put forward dollars to serve our uses and what we need. You know my view. I think world-class cities have their football teams in their city limits. And we can do all of those things. We can do football, we can do recreation, we can do parks, we can do housing, we can do retail, we can do more jobs in commercial. But we don't need the commanders to make that happen. We can do it with them, or we can do it without them. But what we are willing to do is follow the model that we followed to build the DC United Stadium, which has been amazing for soccer. It's been amazing for our city. And we controlled and developed the horizontal infrastructure there, and the team built their stadium. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the money in there for DC Housing Authority repairs.
Sure.
Folks on your team were telling us that, this money would not only help repair those 1,500 units, but that the budget would include specifics on which properties would be repaired. And I know those are decisions that the Housing Authority has normally sort of made on their own and worked with you all on funding. I mean, to what extent would you say your approach to funding DCHA repairs has changed? Is it giving you more control and being able to work with the Housing Authority on what properties are being improved?
I have more confidence in their leadership and the leadership's ability to get things done. They've already demonstrated that they're getting more dollars out of the door. And the more confident we are, the more investments we can make. I don't know if we can say anything else specific about the properties, Jenny?
What we did this year, as the mayor just mentioned, working with the Housing Authority, is identified specific properties that the funding will be used for. And I believe that in the capital budget book, what you'll see is a master project, and then you'll see a table that should list all the specific properties that are getting renovated and modernized over the next 3 years.
Yes.
Hey, Mayor, quick question. So you're proposing to put $500 million into the Housing Protection Trust Fund, which would be the biggest single-year investment, I think, since you've been mayor. Obviously, there's been concern, the auditors report about how the money is spent, what it's actually spent on, what income brackets are getting that money. So how would you ensure, or how is the government ensuring that that $500 million would go to help the people who would need it the most, given the price of housing in D.C.?
Sure. People across all incomes up to a lot need help with housing. And I want to establish that and make it really clear. And our focus is on all of the parameters that have been established for the Housing Production Trust Fund, keeping in mind that some delivered before I was mayor that were outside of those parameters. But it is important that we stick to those parameters, but also fund other workforce housing initiatives. We have been able to do that, I think, in this current budget with a middle income or workforce housing dollars that are allocated. That is allowing us to build affordable housing in places that haven't had affordable housing before.
And now just shifting to public safety, you say you want to hire 4,000 police officers. I mean, that's a number that's been tossed about since, I mean, Mayor Gray mentioned that when he was mayor. Jack Evans used to mention it all the time. Is there any sense, I mean, has the police department given you a sense of 4,000 is the ideal number? Like, that's where MPD has to be to do what it has to do in the city? Or is there not really a more kind of academic foundation for why that number is where it should be?
We look at the number of people we have. That's visitors, that's workers, that's our residents, the things that they do, where they go to work, where they go to party, where they go to swim, you name it. And so we have a lot of different activities. The one thing that's important to me is their response times, and that given our population, workers, tourists, visitors, that they're meeting it. And of course, we look at crime and where crime is happening. And making sure that the police can not only respond, but deter crime. We've been at 4,000 recently. But when you have 2 years of no hiring and attriting about 300 a year, you get to force levels that are 3,500 or below. And we think that can be dangerous. What we don't want is to wait till somebody calls 911 and it's, double time for the police to get there. That's too late. It's too late to be investing in police. And DC residents deserve more. They deserve to have their 911 call answered immediately and to have professional officers there to respond to what they need. A few years back, Kathy Lanier, nobody questioned it then, but that's okay. She said we needed, if we got below 3,700, then we would see a real degradation to our response times. We're well below 3,700. So we're going to keep working to retain our officers. Again, it's important. Those retention dollars are important, and to hire new ones.
Thank you. I had an off-topic question on the terrible incident recently at St. Elizabeth's Hospital where one patient killed another patient. Are there actions that you believe that St. Elizabeth's should have taken or things they should be doing differently?
We'll have an after action. I can't really comment on it now. Again, we always, anytime we have an in custody death, which when we're responsible for people, we take that responsibility very seriously. I haven't gotten that report out yet, Julie, but we will do what is necessary to keep people safe. Yes.
Regarding the timeline of the RFK location, is there a proposed timeline? And then second, regarding DCRA and the Department of Buildings, what would you like to see coming from Chairman Mendelson in working together regarding that agency split?
Well, you may have heard a couple of chuckles when we were talking about it. This is not a proposal that I think is warranted. But given the council is a high priority for the council and that they funded it in the last budget, the director and I and city administrator have thought through how we can actually address the issues that people are having with DCRA. Keep it in mind, it's a regulatory agency, and the director has a lot of great ideas. So we're going to be hiring. This is part of the reason I don't love the idea, because we have to create a whole new bureaucracy. It's also presented some strain on the existing bureaucracy. And the sooner that we have it settled, I think the better it will be for leadership and our ability to retain good people. The timeline for the sports complex, what year does that come in, Jenny?
The sports complex is funded over 3 years, beginning in fiscal year 26 and completion in fiscal year 28.
Okay.
Mayor Bowser, your budget does not raise taxes.
No new taxes.
However, as it goes to the council, you're going to have some more progressive members who say, well, we should raise taxes probably on the wealthy. Now, what are your thoughts about that? And are you going to encourage members of your team as you interact with the council members not to try to raise taxes for this particular budget?
There is absolutely no reason to raise taxes. And you go through this budget, it's $19.5 billion for 700,000 Washingtonians. And we have made historic investments. It includes recovery dollars. We also have infrastructure dollars that are flowing, that will begin flowing through the city. And I see absolutely no reason to raise taxes. Now, I saw no reason to raise taxes last year either. But that happened. And the definition of rich or the wealthy was what, 250? Did that? So that started at 250. So there are a lot of people that I represent across the city that have incomes, household incomes of 250. And they're not rich. They have big mortgages, they have kids in school and activities. They have more than a lot of people, but they're not rich. And so if we needed to raise taxes, that's what we would all be up here saying to you right now. But we've been able to make historic investments in HPTF. We've been able to invest in opening a new high school and an advanced career and technical center. We've been able to invest in something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, this sports complex. We've been able to invest in a new jail without raising taxes. Thank you, everybody.